All right, I think we're live. Hi everyone. It's so nice for you to join us. It's European evening, American afternoon, or late morning. Today we are being joined here with filerskeepers by TrustArc, Joanne and Paul, who will introduce themselves after this. We want to discuss harmonizing data retention and privacy compliance today with you, a topic we just can't stop talking about. Very, very happy to dive in with for me, a house brand when it comes to privacy. I remember when I was a practitioner, and that was at the time that I was a few kilos lighter and had not that much gray hair. I was using Nimity as a practitioner, so it's always, I have warm and fuzzy memories because it was also kind of the first real know-how tool that was useful to me, to be honest. So I'm not today in charge of the slides, so I'm gonna say next slide, please. Yep. So welcome everyone. We are recording today's session, so you can rewatch later or share it. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so please jump in the chat, say hi to each other, ask your questions, and please ask as many as you can. We want this to be useful for you, and just get comfortable. We're here to share some thoughts. Maybe we can go to the next slide. All right. So just for those of you who don't know me, I'm Wanne Pemelaar. I'm the co-founder and currently CEO for filerskeepers and a little baby company called Lawstronaut. With filerskeepers, we read all the laws in the world, and we take from their rules that tell companies how long they should store their records and data. And we have a dashboard where you can build retention schedules and calculate what's the most optimal retention period, and we can keep that up to date. And I'm very happy today. I hired a senior developer that's going to help us speed up the connectors. So we want to really connect to as many systems as we can. So also wink, wink to Joanne and Paul. All right, I'll have Joanne and Paul introduce themselves. Maybe Joanne?
Hi, thank you, Wanne. I'm Joanne Furch, Vice President of Privacy Knowledge at TrustArc. I've been with TrustArc for just a little over 26 years in a variety of operational and policy and product related roles. And, I lead our knowledge team that develops all the content that you see across the TrustArc platform, which includes the Nimity research, the standards that we have in our Privacy Central product, as well as our out-of-the-box risk assessment. So our team is busy keeping abreast of all the different changes and all the different privacy laws.
And that's becoming an increasingly difficult task, right?
It's like once you think you're done, like in the US, every time I think it's, oh good, we're caught up. Oh no, something else amended their law, or Pennsylvania is like on the cusp of to pass in their comprehensive consumer privacy laws. So it's a never-ending task. So I think I just need to stop wishing that I'm caught up and just
all right.
At one point we were wishing for more. Right now, oh boy, did we get it.
So over to you, Paul.
Yes, thank you. Delighted to be here. I'm Paul Nyako. I head up our customer enablement within our TrustArc organization. What does that mean? I'm the guy that kind of is on the phone often with the sales team and trying to understand where the problems are. Whether you're trying to build a program or already have some sort of program, where you need to go kind of next. And prior to me joining TrustArc, I was a customer of TrustArc when I was a chief privacy officer at the Kellogg Company. And I also used the Nimity framework from its early days. And just delighted to be here and share kind of a personal perspective, if you will.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe we can go to the next slide. Can you just talk a little bit more about TrustArc? We already, mentioned two brands here, TrustArc and TrustArc Nimity. So maybe if you could tell anyone who doesn't know about you what it is you do.
Yeah, TrustArc, we're a software company providing privacy management solutions to help companies with their end-to-end privacy program, building it out, establishing the governance. So, starting like with research, building it out, being able to operationalize your program, implement the different things you need to do. So, helping you build out your data inventory, your records of processing, doing your risk assessments, and then also demonstrating, to the, your stakeholders of how you have your responsible practices in place, like, ensuring that you're getting the appropriate consent, being able to effectively respond to data subject requests, and also being able to, through one of our assurance programs, be able to outwardly demonstrate that, yes, you have dotted the I's, crossed the T's, you got the responsible practices in place, like our responsible AI certification. So in short, we're helping companies, empower them to manage their privacy programs effectively, at scale, and efficiently. And we've been doing this for over 20 years. And, we prioritize our customers because, that's the only way, we can work together to overcome some of these challenges and solve problems. So we love working and collaborating and, solving problems together.
Brilliant. Well, and that's exactly how I got to know TrustArc as one of the pioneers of basically privacy management solutions, but also data content. Basically, it's not just software; it's also content. All right, maybe we can go to the next slide. Just wanted to go really briefly over the agenda and, kind of reiterate the point of why retention sits at the heart of privacy and how important it is then to build a defensible integrated privacy / retention program. And then, the operational reality, it's not easy to decide on retention, let alone implement it throughout the business. And what are the ways in which we can bridge that gap? I think that's what the million Canadian or US dollar question, basically. So everybody's thinking about that part. And I think the pressure is on. We really need real compliance. Thank you. So I always say to everybody in every single presentation I give, this slide comes back. We want real compliance. And then I always say, I was there watching when the GDPR got voted into law by the parliament, and you can see everybody was there. This is kind of, I think, not the photo of that session, but everybody was there, and there was a yeah, it was one of the most important laws that was ever voted into law, and that's really weird because it's privacy. Why is that? Well, the first thing is, when it comes to personal data, laws are useless. You can't protect a name with an IP right. If that would be the case, I would happily license my name to everybody to use it, of course. So the only real way to regulate personal data basically is privacy laws, and was the GDPR, and that's why this was the most beloved piece of legislation of the EU history. And every speaker in Parliament, before they voted, said the same thing: we want real compliance. Didn't matter what kind of political party they were from, they want real compliance, and you've seen that in the enforcement. It's there. A lot of privacy advocates will say, "Oh, we're not enforcing enough. There should be more, or the fine should be higher." I've heard Max Schrems say that about Meta. He thought that it should have been a 4 billion fine, and not another one. So there's always someone who's not happy. I think the fines are pretty high by the way. So yeah, real compliance. That's what we need to do. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, and that is also happening. It's all happening also in the US. We're seeing more compliance, and I think that the FTC is taking, the initiative here a lot. And what's very important is that in the GDPR you have the no longer the necessary requirement, and then suddenly with Cafe Press, Drizzly, um, FTC started reading a whole privacy law in its FTC Act and started to also apply the principle of no longer than necessary to US-based companies and for US-based processings, which was new, and I think, honestly, also a little bit unfair for these parties who were completely, caught by surprise. It all happened because of a breach. They come in, they see, hey, you're keeping data too long, and they slap you on the wrist. The COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule, under COPPA, now also has a no longer than necessary requirement in there. Yeah, and if in the FTC Blackboard settlement, it's even now apparent that you need to have a retention schedule. You need to comply with the retention schedule. You need to publish your retention schedule. And that's very scary, that last part. A lot of companies aren't ready to make a public commitment with regards to retention because they're still figuring it out. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So yeah, maybe we can move to the next slide. So it's not just, California CPRA that has a no longer than necessary requirement. We have the same type wording in Colorado, in Minnesota, in Virginia. Maybe you guys are more up to date than I am, but and more are coming. But there's also a bunch of laws that say that you should get rid of data when they are no longer required to be retained, which is not the same thing. They went for a different formulation. But what does that mean? And there are 5 states that have that wording. So we have to see how that gets enforced. But it's very clear now that you cannot keep data longer than necessary also in the US. And if you have a retention period of 3 years in California and 10 years in Minnesota, you can no longer say, oh, we're just picking the longest one. Because we're a domestic player and we just go for the longest. Then California will say, what do we care about the 10-year retention period in Minnesota? Our law says 3 years. And the latest thing that I wanted to note here, and then we'll go to the next slide, but this very recently, the regulator in California has I think broadened the scope of what a consumer means to also kind of say, well, that also applies to applicants and and employees in certain circumstances. So that's also something that is very impactful, by the way. It's very clear that the regulators aren't really satisfied with the way it's all written down, and they will just interpret it the way they want. Yeah, so that's what I notice. I don't know, anything that strikes you, Joanne and Peter, on that part?
Yeah, just yeah, it's and we'll definitely get into this more
Okay.
later, but yeah, it's definitely the minimum how you align your retention requirements with data minimization, and then even how the US states are defining what data minimization is. There's a couple different approaches where most states collect the minimum amount of data necessary for to do business, where Maryland and potentially Massachusetts, if its law passes, gets into minimal necessary to provide the product or service the consumer requested. So it's a very narrow definition.
Yeah.
Where the others. So how does retention play into all that is going to be okay, the next question in terms of how companies take a look at that problem.
Yeah.
And if I could kind of kind of branch off of that a little bit, I think from my perspective of having been in a CPO role, the greatest challenge, particularly with Kellogg, and I think that's with any company that is quite large and been around a long time, is you're dealing with lots and lots of cultural issues, right, that need to be sorted, not only from a business perspective, but just in the States, where we're a very litigious society. Let's face it. When we do talk to the Europeans, they look at us like we're nuts. Why are you holding on to that information? For what purpose? And there's always this fear in everyone's head, and also a misunderstanding that people just think, well, we got to do it for at least 7 years, right? Because that's the one area, dealing with the finances, that's kind of broke through to the masses on the state side. It's a lack of awareness. So to me, it's a cultural, it's an awareness thing. Once we start getting some momentum behind that, then I think this thing becomes more of a natural, because it's certainly, no one wants to keep the data just to keep the data. They just don't know if they do need it or don't need it.
I don't know, Paul. I remember back in the wild west of the internet days, where we would ask, well, why are you collecting that? You don't really need that. Well, we may need it later.
Absolutely.
What are you gonna do with it? We don't know yet. So, and I think companies are realizing that's not the way to go, but
Yeah, but
it's risk, right?
Yeah, the risks are real because I mean, I know the US and also in part, Canada, as countries where there's so much legislation at federal and state level, or provincial level, that there's so many rules that require you to keep something at a minimum, and that's where still a lot of the enforcement focuses on. If you look at the other side of the spectrum, the financial institutions, they all get slapped on the wrist for not retaining the data. So it's really like you're never really sure. You need to invest in this.
And so in uncertainty, right, what do? We
Keep-
hoard it for longer.
Yeah, that's it. But that's also very, part of human nature. We are hunter-gatherers by origin, so it's in our DNA to hold on to things. But now we live in a society of plenty, so a lot of their data is just, it turns stale real quick. Do I think any data from before the pandemic, that's a different world. It changed after, so a lot of the trends that you saw there were kind of interrupted and then rebooted, and then now, so yeah, it's not really that necessary. Anyhow, can we go to the next slide, please? So, and of course, the story continues in the EU as well, yeah? So lots of enforcement. This is just one example, yeah? And it's an example of the CNIL. And the CNIL, actually, nowadays, almost every single enforcement by the CNIL, the French regulator, at one point focuses on retention. So they come in, and they just see that you over retain data, and for them it's pretty easy because they put out guidance that you should keep customer data no longer than 3 years, and everybody keeps customer data longer than 3 years, and sometimes justifiably so. No, we have a bookkeeping requirement or whatever, and then they come and say, oh, it's too long. So that's you see a lot of enforcement there in the EU, and it's just like one of their checkboxes that they, yeah. So yeah, maybe we can go to the. So how does a privacy audit looks like? Yeah, they come in because they received a complaint, or there is a data breach that was notified, and then they will go in and they will ask their questions, and one of those questions are, how long do you keep your data? And if they are not satisfied with the answer, they can come in, literally, they will ask your admins or your tech teams to open up the application. And then they will say, if you show the application, you go like, no, I need to be we need to look at database level, please. So you open up database level, and then they're going to ask questions per line item, like what's this? Well, who has access to it? How long are you keeping this, and why, and all of that. Anyone will fail at that level. Yeah. So it's super easy for them to spot a non-compliance. The only thing they need to do is ask. Yeah. And that's on both on the minimum and the maximum end. Because the only either you don't have the data where you should have had it, or you don't have it so you don't have it where you should have, and you have it where you shouldn't have. Yeah. So that's just that easy. And how do you protect yourself to it? And that's why I believe the professional, the IG professional, or the records manager, or they are like one of those functions that we all need to hold very dear. And I see, unfortunately, a lot of people being laid off by their organizations, records managers with 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience. They know the company inside out. They know what matters. And for me, I want to more and more bring this discussion to privacy. I want to make a plea to keep the records manager. Maybe they need to update their skill set and their knowledge a little bit, but I feel it's an essential tool in the toolkit of a general counsel, CPO, CISO, head of data. Yeah. Why? Because they know data quality. They understand what matters to your organization and what doesn't. They understand data minimization. They don't like rot, particularly, yeah, redundant, obsolete, trivial data. They know about retention. They care about the life cycle of data and records, and they understand purpose, limitation, and security. So they can help you with that. And those are topics, to be honest, that a lot of the legal counsel, a lot of the privacy officers just let slide and say, well, that's a topic for the business to sort out. I don't know what is redundant. So yeah, I also believe it's an enabler for AI. And enabling innovation, because you need to have qualitatively high standard of data in order to train your AI. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, and I think, one of the other challenges around data retention and privacy is that they've been, often treated in different silos, and there's probably a few different reasons for that. So first you got your regulatory drivers. So privacy laws, tend to focus on individual rights and lawful processing of data. And where you really get your retention requirements are from sector specific laws, like your tax, employment, financial, and health laws that mandate that you keep, certain types of records for a minimum period of time. And so, the resources are different, the legal bases, that, drive privacy versus data retention. They tend to get assigned to different teams. So you do have your records managers, you got your privacy people, and these teams have different objectives. So, privacy frameworks prioritize minimization, don't keep the data. Whereas your retention policies, as Paul touched upon, it's like, hey, the US, we're very litigious. So we want to keep, retention record, they want to preserve the data, in case there is an audit, a dispute, some regulatory enforcement. And so there is, I think, a natural tension between the two functions. And and that's, again, operating in your organizational silos where privacy is, housed in a legal or risk function. Retention might be managed by IT or business operations or records management, and they'll have different tooling and processes. Privacy is focused on responding to data subject requests and consent management and data mapping. Retention is focused on archiving, storing, and making sure that, when data is deleted, it's, it's part of it's being deleted because of the retention policy says you have to delete it. And so, not only do the people need to line up, but the technology also needs to line up. And then also, as you kind of touched upon, Juan, is, those cultural and historic reasons where, records retention has been around forever, physical files, corporate archives, and, privacy programs came to be in the digital age. So, a little bit more recent. So, they weren't really designed to be integrated. So,
Mhm.
you do struggle with the keep it just in case, with the
Yeah.
delete it when it's no longer necessary. So, we need to provide that clarity.
Yeah.
And I think,
Absolutely.
And we need to demand it as well. I mean, what I see is that for a long time systems weren't even capable to delete any data. They're still, legacy systems you just need to shut down and decommission because you can't manage the data anyway. So that's for a long time a reality, and then came GDPR, and some providers started saying, oh well, maybe we need to integrate a bit of deletion in here, and that's still not usually up to par with what we want and what we expect there. So yeah, it's also something that I believe the customers of the big vendors can need to advocate even more for, and also point out where the tools are lacking, the
yeah.
functionality. Yeah.
And, having that clarity around data retention, that's just going to make your privacy program stronger. And it's going to also help reduce, some uncertainty around, what does it compliance mean, especially across all these different functions within your organization. So it's going to help you with your audits, providing evidence of compliance. You have that clear retention schedule, under GDPR that shows how your organization applies with the storage limitation principle. You have your consistency across systems, auditors ask you, how long are you keeping the data? Well, now you can answer that question with a documented retention policy versus, some ad hoc response from the IT guy. And then also, it does give you a better position in dealing with regulators of, why was it retained? You can point to something to show, why. It eliminates the guesswork. And then also, again, you have that audit trail. And then also think about it in how you're managing data processing risks. You got, privacy professionals all know about, having to do risk assessments, your DPIAs, your data, your privacy impact assessments, PIAs, helps you identify risk. Having that clarity will help you identify like areas where you may be keeping data too long. And, and that's going to increase your risk of breach, misuse, unauthorized access. And then you have purpose alignment. So, DPIAs require whether the data processing is proportional to its purpose. So rules around retention can help you link data to that lawful purpose and define when the purpose expires. And then also as part of your mitigation measures in doing your assessment, maybe shortening that retention period might be a risk mitigation factor that's part of your plan. So you should be able to point to that predefined schedule that shows, hey, the risk has been addressed. And, and that also leads to, when you're looking to adopt a new system or a vendor, having that clarity and being able to say, hey, can this system or vendor, does this align with our policies? And you're better able to answer that question. And of course, we always like, the cross-cutting benefits of reducing audit surprises. You reduce the last-minute scrambling. You improve your data minimization posture. By tying retention to your inventory, you clearly show regulators or your auditors how your program enforces your data lifecycle discipline.
Yeah.
So how you have that data minimization, and then also it helps you respond to those data subject requests, because you're looking, the clarity helps you oh my God, we have this data from 10 years ago. And then that means that's going to be part of the request. Whereas if you have clear policies when you, for how long you retain the data, you delete the data, then, you're going to be able to be more effective in responding to those type of requests. So clarity turns a messy, subjective conversation into a documented practice. It really helps you shift that thinking.
I like sometimes someone asks me, say like, well, this data resides in a third-party system, so I don't think the retention schedule applies to this. And then I think what I should say from now on is just check your ROPA, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where everything is. Like, okay, this is the processing, this is the system in which we use it, and this is the retention period, and yeah, then everything comes together. Voila, there's your
Yeah,
answer.
and if you're adopting a third-party system, that's why thinking through the retention and the ability to enforce your retention policies needs to be part of that third-party due diligence to make sure that it provides clarity into whether you're going to be able to meet your obligations in terms of your legal requirements, your regulatory requirements, and your own organization's like tolerance for risk and how long you retain the data. And vendors should, their systems should give you the either you the ability or the vendor has processes for removing the data if you request it. So it all ties together. Paul,
Thank you.
want to add anything?
I think in the next slide, I think it kind of nicely dovetails where you kind of laid the groundwork, if you will. And obviously, you may be at different stages of this, right, within an organization. But if you were starting from the beginning, here's a typical way that you would approach kind of a unified approach. In the underlying thing, I think that's been stated over and over again, but is crystal clear. You have to know. Just raising your shoulders and saying, well, I just don't know, but let me get you to over here. And any of us who have gone and been across the table from a regulator knows that uncertainty is not in your favor at all, right? Ability to react very quickly and responsively and timely is critical. And one of the things that was important, we didn't have it initially at Kellogg, but as part of working with my CISO and starting a new capability in data governance, it was important to have this governance committee formed. And the idea of having it making sure it's cross-functional, right? The centralized committee is kind of that foundation for consistency, is what we're looking for, right? The fragmentation between operations of the different departments, that no longer is a valid argument, right? In today's working environment, we have to know. We have to know all the information coming in and out. So on the second to the left there, right? We talk about it all the time. You have to know data inflows and outflows, right? You have to map it. You also need to make sure you're classifying it, right? What bucket is this going into? Is it going into a public only bucket? Is it going into an internal? Is it restricted? Is it confidential? Right? All these things need to come into play because eventually you need to categorize it, right? And the categorization is critical to determine risk. And you want to take care of those things that have high risk first, right? Because those are the things that are going to impact you first and foremost financially if you get tapped on the shoulder, or reputationally, right? For a company like Kellogg, it was reputationally which scared us more than anything. It wasn't the fine. It was the credibility with moms. They expected a 100-year-old company to act a certain way. And if we didn't, that was a problem. The other part is we're seeing a lot of this, right? And I've stated this in another discussion I had recently on a podcast where a lot of things are being boiled down to risk, right? What's the risk to the organization, right? If it's not generating revenue, right, for the organization to kind of get the senior leadership involved, is there some aspect of risk that will be dialed up that will get the attention? And a lot of things, frankly, are being looked at holistically from a risk perspective. I don't care if it's supply chain risk, privacy risk, security risk. We're looking at it from a risk perspective. And so we need to understand, and when we look at and build a retention schedule, understand where's the risk here? Where is the reputational and financial hit if something goes awry here, and making sure we're prioritized accordingly. The other thing is kind of enabling, right? The policies and procedures. And in all of this, right, is the idea of getting everyone aware, creating awareness. And I'll keep saying it over and over because I really do believe that's the biggest thing holding a lot back is unknown, right?
Yeah.
It's not, let's face it, this isn't a sexy topic, okay?
Yeah.
This isn't people aren't, other than maybe the few of us on this call, right? It's not something that gets people real excited, but it's critical nevertheless. And to Joanne's point, if you could go to your CISO and say, hey, we have a loyalty program and all this data, personal data is lying here. I'm going to consolidate it all to here. So you only have to create that, real strict DMZ zone around this database from a security standpoint, that's critical. I can now focus my attention here. These other 18 databases, maybe I don't need to worry about, or I can have much more of a limited security infrastructure in place. So the awareness does help across the organization. And then, of course, the last thing is train. And I don't mean that you got to, do a blunt and, lunging people to death about it. That's not the way to do this, right? Start with a crawl. The crawl is, do they know who to bring in? Do they know to move it to a governance committee? Do they know that a schedule exists? I may not know the specific answers, but I can get the right people that can answer the question. That is a step in the right direction. If you think you're going to get your rank and file to understand and be able to do verbatim retention schedules back, sorry to say that's not going to happen. So that would be my take on that. And if we go to the next, go ahead, Wayne.
Maybe just 30 seconds. I know from personal experience now. So I am running 2 scaling companies, and one is a startup, but we've grown from, I think, 4 people to we're going to 20 now in less than a half a year. And just to set up the culture, the structure, the way of working, we need to build our factory basically, and we need to learn what it is to build that factory. And that is awareness, that is communication, talking over and over and over, monitoring a lot, like, oh, where's it going wrong? Okay, let's tweak the machine a little bit more, tweak the machine. And that's what I feel. And also with a bigger organization, filerskeepers is now going towards 70 people. So like the bigger organization, it's also tweaking the machine. And that's how I believe we should look at these kind of change projects. Guys, how old is that darn GDPR now? We're going on year 8 or 9 or something. What is it?
It passed in 2016, so it's
passed in 2016. So we're used to the concept now for over a decade, I think, because with all the years of deliberations on it, but still, we're still tweaking the machine, and I don't see that commitment yet. You need to almost have the same rigor as building your company to actually change it and get it compliant. That's what I wanted to add.
So the next slide, please. I just want to, the biggest thing is this, number one, in the interest of time, make sure you invite and you're inclusive of all the major players. Too often I see that they've involved a few and haven't involved the others. Some of it is not intentional. Some of it is they just didn't know that they were also dealing with that type of data. Right. And so cast your net wide and let them self-determine whether or not they want to be a part of that going forward, if it's something that can be let go. But in most cases, all those that I put in front of you there, those are probably the key or entities within the organization you want to have at that committee. I'm not saying, the reason I bring this up, a lot of people go, oh, there's too many people, we will never get anything done, and blah, blah, blah. Stop. We have to have those people involved first, right? We have to get the playing field right. Then we can go to a smaller group that operates it. But someone needs to lay out the strategy in what this is about. And you have to cast the net wide there. The other things are pretty much what I basically said earlier. So we can move on.
And that's a really good point, Paul, because that's how you're going to get to harmonization between retention and privacy and get to that integration. Is you need to understand what the requirements are, and to do that, you do need to get the players in the room, understand what data they're touching, what retention schedules apply and then how you align that with, privacy requirements. So I think, that harmonization, getting the people in the room, is going to ensure that, it's just retention's not just a records management function, but it's part of your overall kind of like privacy and governance accountability framework.
We talk to thousands of companies, and sometimes some of them run it themselves, sometimes we help, but then there's always one team that just doesn't want to do it. Retention, like, and then it's hilarious. I can never predict which one. Sometimes I'm like, oh, sales is probably not gonna be happy with us. No, they were just full in, yay, with data quality. That's how we sell retention to sales, data quality. And but then sometimes we have like finance doesn't want to participate, which I find interesting. So Paul, you said, yeah, let them decide. Yeah, but maybe with a little,
Yeah.
we can get the general counsel to give them a little nudge, yeah.
And that's why I think that risk-based approach is important. It applies here too.
Exactly.
It's true, yeah.
If marketing says I don't want to be a part of it, that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah. All right.
And I'm picking on marketing because that's where I came out of. So I understand that world, and as we were talking about early on, right? Collect as much stuff you can get up front because they'll never get that chance again, right? Mentality that marketers typically have.
It can get super. But it can get super emotional, and I'm sorry, Grandpa's talking, and we're taking probably too much time, so I'll try to go over the next slides a bit quicker. But I was once involved in a litigation enforcement, privacy enforcement into the biggest loyalty program here in the Netherlands, and then we needed to kind of go through all the data. Everything was kept too long, and then there was this small file small database that contained like 20 years of data, and we said, well, this needs to go. I was sitting next to the guy, to the marketeer. I was like this, and the guy started crying, and I didn't. Whoa, what did I do? Sorry, what's going on here? And then he said, yeah, sorry, I was there at the birth of this loyalty program that everybody uses in here, and I just I kept this file so that next year is the 25th anniversary, and I'm gonna go. I will be retiring that year, and I wanted to do something fun with the original subscribers to this loyalty program. So I kept this on file, and I just wanted to do so. And I went, no, sorry, it has to go. But it was, data can really have a value to people, even in the business, right? So I just wanted to bring that story. Let's skip over the next one if you don't mind, but let's go to the next slide. So, can technology help? Yes, it can. Yeah. So I believe, you need retention schedules. They need to be up to date. We need to automate that schedule. The law changes, boom, you get a ping. The law has changed. Do you accept or decline? Everything you do gets logged, right? So that you have that audit log. So when the auditors come and ask questions, you have answers. Build workflows around everything. Do you need someone in the business to approve? Do they want to change something in the schedule? Let's automate that. Let's service now the heck out of that. Yeah, that's what we all do. Yeah, filerskeepers does that. But then we need to do advanced mapping with the schedule. Yeah, and other systems. This is where you bring in, your robots and everything. You start mapping that schedule to your robots, but you need to probably discover data. You need to figure out its data lineage. You need to start working around or build workflows, and then you need to actually start automating the life cycle. You need to dare and delete and dare and anonymize, and that is something that I feel very dearly about. And you need to do audits on your anonymization. You can't just say, oh, I'm anonymizing something and then I'm out of jail. No, that's not how it works, unfortunately. Any data set has a residual risk of re-identification. It's scientifically proven. Get over it. and we need to deal with that thing. So that's it. And then when you start mapping to systems, you're going to run into a lot of issues. There are scope differences between your schedule and the system. Yeah. So you say, oh, there's a different rule in the country between regular leave and sick leave records. Yeah. But then, Workday groups it all together, calls it absence. What are we going to do? We need to make a choice. It's a legal choice, guys. That's a legal choice. There's data dependency. I cannot delete A without also deleting B, and A and B have different retention periods. What are we going to do? It's a legal decision. The trigger are different, right? So the law says end of fiscal year, system says, I don't know what a fiscal year is. What are we going to do? Those are things where unless the lawyers get involved, it will never be implemented because IT, the business, says, I don't know. What do you think, legal? What do you think, privacy? Yeah. So that's, and ideally we're making those choices already when we're mapping it to the ROPAs. Yeah. So that's where you bring value. That's where you kind of start to operationalize the retention schedule further. And that's why you need to connect the dots basically, and start automating. And I think there's a huge opportunity still for the industry to tackle this part and go further. I'm seeing some pretty good developments there right now. Yeah, always happy to talk more about those, of course. All right. Next slides, please.
Yeah, and I think, technology is going to be key in terms of getting to harmonization between retention and privacy. About, how it needs to be part of your privacy accountability framework, and also integrating your retention policies into your data inventories, into your ROPAs. That's also going to help with harmonization through like reducing any compliance conflicts, where it can help you reconcile any differences between regulatory requirements, trying to meet data minimization principles. You got everything in kind of that one centralized spot, which enables your organization to kind of speak in the same language with one voice around your retention policies. And you're doing that in your audits and your data subject responses, regulatory inquiries, and and with that, it's also going to strengthen your auditability, accountability, and it definitely is going to make your privacy program that much more accountable under scrutiny and defensible. And and also just knowing that having definitive retention requirements, it's embedded as part of your privacy program, that is going to embed into your life cycle management, into your operations. So ensuring that deletion and minimization are operationalized rather than just kind of being theoretical. So because you're having that end-to-end view of your data life cycle governance, from data collection, use, storage, and then deletion. So it's everything is linked together, and it helps you mitigate risk. You're reducing that harmonization helps you reduce costs. It's helps you explain why data is kept and when it has to be disposed of. So this is going to lower your regulatory exposure, but also lower your storage and security costs. Companies store a lot of data. That costs a lot of money, increases your risk for breach. Reduce it. Have that clear retention schedule. And then it's going to create shared accountability across functions. So, as Paul talked about, getting all the people in the room, where you're assigning ownership and responsibility over the data, that becomes a shared responsibility. It's not just like the records guy, having to shoulder the burden, but it's across, it's integrated into your privacy program governance. And that means it becomes a shared responsibility, where owners are identified. So this, um, strengthens your compliance, making your data lifecycle rules consistent, defensible, and operational. It's going to bridge the gap between kind of the theoretical requirements that you see in privacy laws against, kind of hard and fast requirements you see in sectorial laws, and being able to bring those together based upon, both legal requirements and your organization's tolerance for risk. So factoring that in as well. So you're turning, this into a proactive evidence-based discipline rather than just kind of this patchwork and ad hoc of, oh yeah, we, keep it, I think, 2 years, where you can say, no, our policy says we retain this and delete this data after 2 years. So, it becomes a risk management tool for you that helps you reduce risk and save on costs.
Brilliant. Yeah, the next slide.
I mean, the big key is here, right? It's awareness. That's what this is all about, right? Starting with awareness. Well, if you have awareness, I can help mitigate some inconsistency in rules. If I have awareness, I can help navigate fragmented systems and solutions. Awareness will help develop the common approaches across systems and so forth, right? So it all comes back to awareness, having a clear understanding, and then putting, with eyes wide open, in place what needs to be put in place holistically. That's how to bring about exercising that harmonization.
And it is so important that awareness, and just having the discussion, the debate, I think is already really good. Yeah. What you want to build momentum, ideally, within everything you do, and then the business comes to you and say, hey, how long are we going to keep this? That's where you want them to be. Yeah. In the whole cycle, in all the stages of grief that you have to go through, you want them to come to you at the end and say, hey, I got this idea, or hey, this is going too slow, we need to implement. That's where you want to have them. So awareness that triggers action, basically, by the business. Yeah, well, thank you very much. We're almost at time, and yeah, maybe if we have 1 or 2 minutes just to answer some questions. I saw very practical questions here in the chat, and that is, can we get a copy of the slide deck? I'm okay with that if you guys are. Yeah,
Absolutely.
we can share the
Awareness. We got to create awareness.
Awareness, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we're very good. Maybe very briefly, I hope you can answer that under a minute, but do you have any, what's next for TrustArc? What's your next year or your next 5 years, if you want to go really broad, gonna look like? Any fun things? Are you gonna work more on integrating or with other systems? Yeah, what?
Yeah, we on integrating, yeah, we're definitely looking to increase our integrations. We partnered with another organization, Workato, to put out some, no code integrations to make that easier for companies. We're also looking at other ways, how we can work together with partners to bring in, where there's those synergies between, kind of other functions like, data retention, security requirements, how that integrates in as part of your privacy program, And, kind of the things that we talked about here today, looking at, how do we help companies understand those requirements and manage their risk in a efficient, effective, and scalable way.
Brilliant.
Resources are, people's resources are stretched thin these days. Laws are, changing faster than, probably once we get off this webinar, we'll probably see something else has changed.
Yep.
We got to help people keep up. And that's what we're TrustArc's mission.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think this is it for us. So we're at time. Thanks everyone for attending. We'll be sharing the recording and the slides, and we're very happy if you want to reach out to us. You can. We'll also put some contact details in the communications afterwards. So thanks for joining, and have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us, Wame.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. Take care.